A reading from Acts chapter 16, verses 11 to 15. From Troas we put out to sea and sailed straight for Samothrace, and the next day we went on to Neapolis. From there we travelled to Philippi, a Roman colony and the leading city of that district of Macedonia. We stayed there several days. On the Sabbath we went outside the city gate to the river, where we expected to find a place of prayer. We sat down and began to speak to the women who had gathered there. One of those listening was a woman from the city of Thyatira, named Lydia, a dealer in purple cloth. She was a worshipper of God. The Lord opened her heart to respond to Paul's message. When she and the members of her household were baptized, she invited us to her home. "If you consider me a believer in the Lord," she said, "come and stay at my house." And she persuaded us. So Paul and Silas, and the team, they arrive in Philippi. And verse 13, we read that they went outside the city gate to the river, expecting to find a place of prayer. Quite odd, that seems. Why did they do that? Well, it's thought that it was something that started when the Jewish people were exiled in Babylon and no longer had a temple. So instead, they gathered at the riverside. After the exile, when they returned, they built synagogues, but those synagogues were built close to running water because of the ceremonial washing required to prepare for worship. But Jewish law required 10 people, 10 adults, in order to have a synagogue. Philippi's Jewish colony, it's thought, was small, so there was no synagogue. So they gather close to the water to pray. They get on with it, if you like. And isn't that an example to us? So often we might say, if only I had a youth worker, or if only we had better technology, or if only we had this, that, or the other, we'd do whatever it is. We use our lack of resources as an excuse not to do what we're asked to by the Lord. But you know, God's more interested in what we do now with what we've got now. So are we making the most of the opportunities, the resources, however limited they may be, now? So verse 14, we're introduced to Lydia. One of those listening was a woman from the city of Thyatira named Lydia. So Lydia is from the city of Thyatira, and that was a centre of the purple woolen industry. And it's thought Lydia was a wealthy woman. We read that she's described as a dealer in purple cloth. We're also told in verse 15 that she has a household, and her house must have been big enough to accommodate the mission team. You know, remember verse 15, she said, "Come and stay at my house." Purple is colour of royalty, colour of the political elite, colour of the wealthy. So it's very likely Lydia was a wealthy businesswoman. She's also, verse 14, described as a worshipper of God. Now that means that she wasn't a Jew, she was a religious Gentile, a religious non-Jew. But she was a lady who understood and acknowledged the one true God. And again, verse 14, we read, the Lord opened her heart to Paul's message. That should remind us of God's sovereignty in salvation. Remember, we're told he opens the eyes of the blind, softens the hearts of the dead. Luke 24, verse 45. Ephesians 1, verse 18. And that should give us some confidence and courage. God does the work. God does the opening of hearts. Our responsibility to proclaim the message, but God does the work. Also, God does the work beforehand in preparation. He opens the hearts. We deliver the message on his behalf. We're his ambassadors, if you like. So that should give us courage and confidence. But also, for those of us in church leadership, clergy or lay, whatever, it gives us a need to make sure we're praying. You see, people often ask me to things on a Saturday night, and I will decline. Now, it's not because it's Saturday night and I want rest. It's because Saturday night we should be in our studies or wherever it is we go to pray. Because we should be praying for Sunday, that God would indeed be opening the hearts of the people who are going to hear God's word on a Sunday. So we're praying for those people who are going to be in our congregations or listening to our message, that the Lord would be opening up their hearts. And also that the Lord would be giving us courage to faithfully preach his word on Sunday when we enter the pulpit. So Saturday night should be a night when we're praying for Sunday. So Lydia, she responds to Paul's message. And then, do you notice how it ends in the final verse, verse 15? If you consider me a believer in the Lord, she said, come and stay at my house. So she responds to the message. She becomes a believer, and she immediately puts that faith into action with her generosity by offering her home for the mission team to stay in. Later, we're going to read that she offers her home as a meeting place for the church. But she comes to faith and immediately puts that faith into action by showing generosity and hospitality. Oh, how often we would respond to the message of God in our own hearts and lives through generosity and hospitality. So again, the importance of prayer, the importance of just getting on with it, with what we have, making the most of the resources that we have, be they small or large, and responding to the message of Jesus with generosity.